Hi, I'm Katie, and today I'm going to go over a quick overview of my Juki TL18QVP Haruka edition. And I love this machine. I've had it for multiple years now, have given it a thorough test through, and I just thought I'd run through what are some of the differences with the 18QVP versus some of the standard models that you've seen probably by anyone else in the sewing community, probably the 2010s, the 2000s, things like that. But I thought I'd touch base on it. So every Juki 18QVP, the TL 18QVP, comes with your extension table, as well as your knee lift for the presser foot. And then you've got a nice handy access point to get to your bobbin. You then have your presser foot, and you've got your presser foot lever on the back. You have an auto threader, you've got your tension dials. The big thing here is this is not standard on the rest of the Jukis. So this is going to be something called your presser foot pressure regulator. So if you have something very bulky or something that needs a little bit more pressure on it, you've got a nice gauge here, and you can put more pressure on your presser foot when you're sewing with it, or you could put less on it. Another item that is different with the QVP, the 18QVP, is the presser foot float, or it's a micro lifter dial. So if you have this dialed up, I'm going to bring it up to the point that there's a few lines in here, you can actually have your, there you go, there's one of the lines, two, and there should be a third one. You can actually set this to be a presser foot float, so when you start sewing, your presser foot will float before it actually starts kicking in. So it's a very handy feature, especially if you're sewing something bulky that might, might drag a little bit or might not evenly feed into the system right out the gate. It's nice to have that feature. So like I said, bag making, things that are a little bit bulky, you can have it float a bit. And as you saw, it raises right there. So very handy. You have your typical threading system. You got two spool rods. I personally, everyone always asks me, why do you have two spools up there? Do you have dual needles? I usually just have a second spool up here to feed my bobbins when I'm winding them. So that way I don't have to unthread, rethread, all that stuff. And I typically sew with the same thread all the time. Let's move on here. You've got your bobbin winder. You have your stitch length. I was just doing an FPP project. So that would be why, if you're watching second week here, I was just working on that FPP project. You've got your needle up, needle down position, which I use quite a bit when binding. Your thread cutter, which is also a great feature on your foot pedal. So typically when you press your toes down on your foot pedal, you're going to be sewing, right? If you rock back and hit your heel onto the foot pedal, it'll actually cut your thread. There's also, if that's something you don't like, there is a rubber gasket that comes with the machine. You can put that in there so you lock out the inability or the ability to thread cut with your presser foot. You've got your reverse lever here, and then also the other thing that's really nice is having the turtle to jackrabbit mode. So typically I'm always sewing in jackrabbit unless I'm doing binding, then I'm typically in the middle. And then your feed dogs up or down, which your feed dogs are what pulls material in. So if you want your feed dogs down, that's typically used during your free motion quilting. And then you've got your turn wheel on the side here. Let's see, might as well move this off here. Take this out. The other thing is, I didn't point out, is actually you have your accessory mounting base right there. And if you want, you've got your LED light. This is changeable for brightness. You've got your on-off button, your power cord port, your foot pedal port, and then you've got your presser foot lever, and that's about it. And then you got your venting for a LED light from Caterpillar, which I featured a bunch of those products on last week's video for my foundation paper piecing. They have an actual little LED light that's rechargeable. That way I just have a little bit more extra light here provided onto my Juki, and it's nice because it's removable. It has a mount that I can take off and on, and that way I'm not married to having that extra light on there. Along with that, you've got your handle, and there's a whole bunch of feet that came with the Juki, which To be honest, it came with a walking foot. I typically don't use a walking foot, you know, the perks of being a long arm quilter. So it had a few other feet that I typically don't use. You've got your zipper foot, things like that. I just stick with the performance foot because I really liked it so fast. And then I use a magnetic seam guide on the metal base plate here to allow for me to make sure I'm getting the same seam allowance for whatever I'm doing, or if I'm adding my binding, things like that. All right, I'm going to show you just general maintenance on what you should do for oiling your main oiling points, as well as how to clean under your presser plate here. All right, so on the top here, there's going to be 4 oiling points. You're going to want to put like 1 to 2 drops in there a day if you're sewing daily. But here's the first 2. Here's your next 2. So you can tell there's a couple extra ones. Those are threaded. Those have screws in them. The ones you want to pay attention to are going to be the ones that don't look threaded. And I'm just going to use, I have this nice metal tip bottle that I use with my long arm. That's just nice to really be able to count out your drops. All right, and then there's another 2, one right here behind your mounting plate, and then one right by the crease of the throat there. Put another 2 in there. And then I'm going to move the camera here. You're going to want to go into where your bobbin is. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove my bobbin. And then we're going to want to oil right where I'll show you with my tip of my bottle, right on the hook. Just one dab there. So as you can see, right here. And then just go ahead and run that through a few more times. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is put our bobbin back in. So the proper way to do this is to hold, which may not seem like common practice. You're going to want to go ahead and hold your bobbin as you typically would, and then with your kind of that little handhold there closed and pop back in, press that final bit so it snaps into place. If you hold that hinge piece out, you're not going to hear that pop into place, and there's a good chance that your bobbin case might not be fully in or locked into place, and then you might damage your needle, break a needle. All right, so we just oiled our bobbin. The other thing we can do while we have our access point for our bobbin up is use this to clean out your area, just in your bobbin area. There will be lint buildup and things like that after quilting. The other point that you may not know is that there is actually an access point down below here, which in case you drop a bobbin or to do a deeper clean, you can come in and you can do a bunch of cleaning down here. Which, here you go. This is what the bottom side of your machine looks like when you have that access plate open, and I just open where my fingers are at is where you place your bobbin into. So you can go ahead and clean that out, as well as, like I said, if you dropped a bobbin, this is an easy way to grab it. And in the next video, we're going to go over a quilted Christmas stocking tutorial.